Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session, Implementing Industry Compliance Frameworks with AWS. My name is Craig Edwards. I'm a Specialist Solutions Architect here at AWS with the Cloud Management Services team. I've been at AWS for a year and a half now, and I came into AWS from the United States Air Force, where I was a Missile and Space Systems Electronics Technician. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at today's planned agenda. The first thing that we would like to do is address how organizations can simplify the process of compliance at scale. One of the biggest challenges to overcome can be understanding just where to start, and we're going to try to help you gain an understanding of that today. So, a recent survey of AWS enterprise customers showed that more than 80% still complete cloud compliance checks manually. This can dramatically impact efficiency and quality assurance. So today we will discuss how to automate deployment and remediation with demonstrations of how to accomplish both. We will also cover the evidence gathering portion of the compliance cycle, which will include querying compliance data and improving audit readiness by automating evidence collection. The first thing that we're going to take a look at is simplifying compliance at scale on the AWS Cloud Platform. So let's dive right in. AWS today offers a wide range of services that can help you monitor and assess compliance. So which one should you be using? Which is the best fit? Or how do you build a compliance solution using these services? We have mapped the AWS suite to the 3 lines of defense model as a quick reference of the service capabilities fit. Now, there is a little bit of overlap there. Now, what is the 3 lines of defense model exactly? So the 3 lines of defense model is a model developed by the Institute of Internal Audit. Now, that first line of defense that you see is going to be where you implement functions that manage risk in the different components of your infrastructure. As you can see on the slide, this is where services like AWS Config, CloudTrail, Systems Manager, Control Tower, and Amazon CloudWatch fit in. There are other services that fit into this first line of defense, but essentially the idea is that these services are going to help you detect any deviation or any risk and address it quickly, also provide you the reporting and automated actions so you can take care of them. In the second line of defense, we have functions that will oversee risk. These are the functions that allow you to have a quick overview and a central place of the security posture for your entire organization. This is where tools like Security Hub, CloudWatch, and AWS Systems Manager fit in because they can give you a quick snapshot of where you are at in terms of compliance, security in a central place, and they evaluate all of your accounts in all regions. And the third line of defense is the functions that provide assurance that you are indeed managing and mitigating the risks that you are implementing with your first and second lines, which we introduced at re:Invent in 2020 fits perfectly. And this service can help automate the process of creating the evidence required to prove that you have established these managed controls. The first service that we'd like to talk about is AWS Config, and in particular, the managed rules that AWS Config is going to offer you. So AWS Config is a service that enables you to assess, audit, and evaluate the configurations of your AWS resources. Config is going to continuously monitor and record your AWS resource configurations and allow you to automate the evaluation of recorded configurations against your desired configurations. With Config, you can review changes in configurations and relationships between your AWS resources. We can dive deep into detailed resource configuration histories, and we can determine overall compliance against the configurations specified in your internal guidelines. This enables you to simplify compliance auditing, do security analysis, change management, and operational troubleshooting. In order to help customers get started quickly and efficiently, we can leverage managed rules. So Similar to how managed services work, managed rules are created and maintained by AWS to allow for quick deployment of rules that fit common use cases and apply best practices. For example, an S3 bucket having public access to the internet or a security group with unrestricted ingress. The second thing we'd like to talk about is conformance packs. Conformance packs simplify organization-wide deployment and reporting of compliance. You can deploy a conformance pack of config rules and remediation actions to your AWS organization. This is particularly useful if you need to quickly establish a common baseline for resource configuration policies and best practices across multiple accounts in your organization in a scalable and efficient way. Performance packs are available for common compliance frameworks and for operational best practices. For example, conformance packs are available for HIPAA compliance and for Amazon Simple Storage Service. Beyond the baseline that a conformance pack may offer to quickly bring to your organization, we can create our own custom conformance packs that are tailored to our individual organizational needs. This can be helpful when there are organizational policies to comply with as it pertains to maybe cost optimization. For example, maybe on top of the deployed conformance pack that is focused on a compliance framework, we want to make sure that we have no elastic IPs that aren't attached, so we can release those and not be paying for it. So now I'm going to pass it over to my friend and colleague, Isaiah Salinas, who is going to demonstrate how we can deploy a conformance pack. Isaiah, over to you.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Isaiah Salinas. I'm a special solutions architect with the Cloud Management Service team. I've been with AWS for almost 2 years. I specialize in AWS Config, AWS CloudTrail, and also AWS Systems Manager. So happy to be here to discuss with you how we can use the various services to implement compliance frameworks. Alrighty, well, so in this demo, we're gonna talk a little bit of how we can deploy a conformance pack. So we're first gonna go over to AWS Config. And within AWS Config, as Craig mentioned, one of the features within AWS Config are conformance packs. And conformance packs are a group of AWS Config rules that are grouped together that are immutable rules that you can deploy to AWS Config within your accounts within a specific region. Now, with conformance packs, under the conformance packs area, we can go ahead and click on Deploy Conformance Pack. And it's going to give you an option as far as to select the specific conformance pack we would like to go ahead and deploy to our accounts within the region we're working with AWS Config. Now, we do have provided various sample templates that help us meet specific operational best practices or industry compliance frameworks. For example, we have compliance frameworks that are around HIPAA, FedRAMP, CIS, NIST, and other compliance frameworks. Now, to go into depth as far as what these specific industry compliance frameworks are actually using or what are they checking, down below we have a link to our documentation that will show us in detail what each of these conformance packs are doing. So let's take, for an example, our HIPAA conformance pack. So we'll look at operational best practices for HIPAA security. If we click on that link, we're then going to see a deeper dive into this conformance packs. And what's nice about the industry compliance frameworks conformance packs that are provided for us is that it will map the control ID that is required for the specific framework to the actual config role that will be used to gather this information. So these conformance packs, as I mentioned, are sample templates. So this will allow you to go ahead and take this conformance pack and then modify it to be able to use it to your specific use case as far as compliancy regulations that you need to meet in your specific organization. Now, within this documentation too as well, I want to highlight that to help you achieve this goal is down below, you have this section for a template that will provide you a link directly to our GitHub repository where we can actually then gather the actual YAML code for this conformance pack. As you can see here, we have the list of the actual code that is done for this conformance packs, all the rules that are checking for the HIPAA conformance pack. And the ideal here is that you can then go ahead and take this conformance pack and then modify it, customize it to fit your specific use case. Now, going back to our AWS console, within here, I can go ahead and select a specific template that I want to deploy. So in here, I'll go ahead and choose HIPAA. And I'll go ahead and click Next. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a name. And so I'm going to go ahead and give it the name of Operational Best Practices for HIPAA Security. So I'll go ahead and click Next and deploy conformance pack. This is going to go ahead and start deploying the conformance pack against my region where AWS Config is currently running. As I mentioned, within this conformance pack, it's going to have a wide variety of different AWS Config roles mapped to those specific control IDs that I referenced within our documentation. So this will take a bit to get installed, and we'll later show you on how these roles look and how they are immutable. So we'll give it a little bit to go ahead and set up this conformance pack. Alrighty, so as we can see, our conformance pack has completed and has been deployed successfully. So we can go ahead and dive into our conformance pack by clicking on the link here. And this is going to give us a nice overview of the different roles that are deployed within our conformance packs. And as you can see, they're already gathering evaluations and marking compliance, the various roles that are being evaluated against our AWS resources. So we can take a look at some of them. So we'll go ahead and look at some of the S3 ones. So we'll look at S3, bucket server-side encryption. And we click on there. And we can see this role is basically evaluating whether our buckets that exist within S3 have enabled server-side encryption. We can see here that we have no non-compliant resources. And we look at our compliance. We have a list of our buckets that are compliant as well. If we go back to our rules section, you'll notice that within our rules, we see the various rules tied to those conformance packs. But one in particular you can see is these rules are specifically grayed out where we can't even make any changes to these rules that are within the conformance packs. As you notice, edit is grayed out. I'm unable to make any changes to the specific role. So that's one of the advantages of deploying your config rules bundled within your conformance packs. It allows you to make these rules immutable. Now, one question is, when we deploy this conformance pack, how then can we scale out to our multiple accounts that we may have under our organization? Well, to do that, we have various methods that you can do in deploying conformance packs. Now, when we deployed a conformance pack here, we uploaded the templates or used one of the sample templates and deployed it out within our specific region. However, with AWS Config, you can also make use of what they call organizational conformance packs, which allow you to deploy the same conformance pack that is in that YAML template code that I showed you and deploy it across your organization. This is only available via the CLI tool, where you can specify your YAML template and deploy it across your organization, which will then allow any member account that has config enabled to automatically deploy that conformance pack to the AWS config. However, I want to show you another method where you can actually do it as well, which was just recently released and made available, and that's within AWS SSM, Systems Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how that looks like. Within Systems Manager, you have this option here called Quick Setup. Now within Quick Setup, you can go ahead and click on Create, and it's going to give you an option where you can also optionally deploy your conformance pack utilizing Systems Manager Quick Setup. So we select conformance packs there and click Next. It's going to give us the option to go ahead and select those same sample conformance pack templates that we showed you within AWS Config. So for example, I can go ahead and choose HIPAA. That will be selected. And then down below, I have the option as far as the targets. I can say I want to deploy this conformance pack across my entire organization, or I can specify specific regions within my organization. Down below gives me the option to go ahead and select the regions that I want to specify when deploying this conformance pack across my organization. I also have the option, if I only want to deploy this conformance pack to my current accounts, but specific regions, I could do that as well by choosing current account and selectively select the region where I want to deploy this. So just want to highlight that this is another area where you can utilize Systems Manager to deploy your conformance pack at scale across your organization, utilizing the sample templates that are provided. Additionally, another method that you can do is these conformance packs can also be deployed via CloudFormation. So being that you can deploy it via CloudFormation, you could also utilize CloudFormation stack sets to deploy your conformance packs across your organization to specifically use or to specific accounts. So within this demo, we were able to see how to deploy conformance packs, see how the sample templates are provided, how control IDs map to specific config roles, and how we can deploy our conformance packs at scale utilizing SSM Quick Setup, our CloudFormation stack set, our organizational conformance packs via the CLI. So now we're going to turn it over back to Craig, and he'll continue discussing on industry compliance frameworks deployment at scale.
All right, thank you, Isaiah. And now that we've seen how conformance packs help simplify the deployment of a compliance framework, let's now talk about how to add automation to remediate resources that may be flagged as non-compliant. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about AWS Systems Manager. With AWS Systems Manager automation runbooks, we can continue to simplify compliance at scale by providing that managed experience to remediate non-compliant resources. Runbooks are available to complete operational tasks that are commonly encountered, as well as getting resources back into a compliant state. We can have runbooks that complete tasks like releasing those non-attached elastic IPs back into the pool, for example. Similar to how we can customize conformance packs to suit our needs, we can also create custom runbooks to build remediation actions that suit our needs. And for continuity, we can receive notifications about automation tasks and runbooks by using Amazon Event Bridge, or we can monitor automation progress and details by using the Systems Manager console. Now Isaiah is going to go ahead and demonstrate how we can remediate those non-compliant resources using AWS Systems Manager runbooks. Isaiah, take it away.
All right, thank you, Craig. So in this demo, we're going to see how we can utilize SSM automation runbooks to provide remediation actions to our config roles. So we're going to go back to AWS Config. So within AWS Config, we're going to go and first take a look on how we can deploy a role and also add remediation actions to that role. So we're going to go to Roles, and we're going to go ahead and click Add a Role. And within this section, we have a wide variety of list of AWS managed roles. And there's about 191 managed roles that encompass various use cases. In this particular example, we're going to take a look at some S3 managed roles. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the S3 server-side encryption. So we have this one called S3 bucket server-side encryption enabled. What this rule is going to do, it's going to basically evaluate your S3 bucket resources and verify that they have server-side encryption enabled. So we'll go ahead and select this. And it's going to ask us to, we're going to go ahead and leave the defaults. And we'll go ahead and click on Add Rule. We'll then see that rule within our AWS Config role section. We'll go ahead and select on it. And so right now what it's doing is basically now evaluating this rule against our existing S3 buckets. And it will then return a compliant or non-compliant. It'll return compliant if our buckets are do have S3 server-side encryption enabled and return non-compliant for resources of buckets that do not currently have server-side encryption enabled. So we'll give it a little bit to return its evaluation. Alrighty, so as we can see here, our AWS config rule for server-side encryption on our S3 buckets did return our evaluation of our resources. And you notice I do have an S3 bucket that is currently provisioned within my account that currently does not have server-side encryption enabled. However, one thing into question is how can we put this actual resource back into a desired configuration state where it has to have server-side encryption enabled? This is where we can make use of remediation actions. And to apply remediation actions to our AWS config role, up on the upper right-hand side, we'll go ahead and click on Actions and choose Manage Remediation. And under this area, we have an option where we can trigger the remediation action either automatically or a manual remediation. Now, automatic remediation will apply this remediation action that we're going to set automatically when it detects a resource in a non-compliant state. If we choose manual remediation, it will require somebody to go and select that specific resource in a non-compliant state and manually click a remediation button that will then trigger this remediation action to put this resource back into a desired configuration state. The next option here is under remediation action details. This is where we're going to get a list of various remediation actions that we can trigger against our resources. As you can see here, there are a variety of different remediation actions that AWS already provides to you that you can make use of. These remediation actions utilize Systems Manager automation runbooks, where you can then utilize these provided managed documents to do specific actions against your resources to put them back into a desired configuration state. However, you can also create your own custom remediation documents where you can outline specific automation steps where you're going to provide different steps to put this resource back into a desired configuration state. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these. It's called S3 Enable S3 bucket encryption. So what this remediation action will do, it will actually go to the S3 bucket and automatically apply server-side encryption on the bucket that currently doesn't have this. So we're going to go ahead and select that remediation action. And now down below, it's going to ask us for specific parameters that this specific automation runbook will require. So it requires a bucket name. It wants to know the server-side encryption algorithm and whether or not we're going to use IAM automation assume role to run this remediation action. So for the bucket name, I'm going to go ahead and pass in the resource ID of this S3 bucket for the bucket name parameter. Now for the server-side encryption algorithm, I'll go ahead and then provide that. So I'm going to go ahead and apply AES 256 and then click Save Changes. So our remediation action is now set for AWS config role. Now to see this take an effect, I'll go ahead and select my S3 bucket that was marked non-compliant, that does not have server-side encryption. And we're going to go ahead and click on Remediate. This is going to trigger that SSM automation runbook, go and basically enable server-side encryption against that S3 bucket. And now it puts it back into a compliant state. As you notice, the action was executed successfully. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and reevaluate our resources. This way we can see whether or not this actual resource now returns back into a compliant state. So we'll give it a little bit to reevaluate the resource, and we'll see it now back into a compliant state. Alrighty, you can see that our S3 bucket is no longer in a non-compliant state. We now look at our compliant buckets. We now see all the various buckets, and we see that my demo bucket that the SSM automation runbook was run against is now in a compliant state. So this gives us a nice example of how we can leverage SSM automation runbooks together with AWS config roles to do our remediation actions to put back into a desired state our resources. Now, how can we make this use within our conformance specs, our industry compliance frameworks that we deploy at scale? So coming back to our documentation that we referenced in our previous demo, in this documentation, it does highlight the various frameworks, but one in particular sample template that you'll notice towards the end that will provide an example template with remediation actions. And it'll give you a sample template, how you can see how you can leverage what we just did via the console under a config role, but now put that together within your custom template for your conformance pack. So we look at this one for Amazon S3 with remediation. You'll see and highlight how they leverage the YAML template, and they leverage the SSM documents for remediation together with the config rule. So I want to show you how we can actually do this with that HIPAA compliance framework that we deployed. So I'm going to go over to our conformance packs here, and I'll deploy again our HIPAA conformance pack. But this time I'm going to deploy a modified version of it with the remediation actions specified for that same role for S3 server-side encryption. So I'm going to go ahead and give my URL for the S3 bucket here. And I'll go ahead and copy the name of that. So I'll use that in the next section. And then we'll deploy our conformance pack. So now the conformance pack is now going to be deployed. Now this is a customized conformance pack for our HIPAA security, but this is with remediation, where I apply those remediation actions on that specific config rule that I just demonstrated, applying the server-side encryption for our S3 bucket. So we'll give that a little bit to deploy, and then I'll show you how that rule looks like in our conformance pack. Alrighty, so our conformance pack was deployed successfully. So let's go and take a look at that specific rule that's bundled within our conformance pack for server-side encryption for S3. So we'll go ahead and see if we can filter that by S3. Let's go back here. Let's go ahead. Here's our S3 bucket server-side encryption. You notice it does have the remediation action enabled. So we go ahead and look at that rule. As you can tell, it is now an immutable rule. Can't make any changes to it. It's bundled within that conformance pack. But now what's different from the sample template that we originally deployed is that it now has a remediation action bundled within that rule. So what this rule now is going to do is when it evaluates an S3 bucket and it sees that a bucket doesn't have server-side encryption enabled, it's automatically going to run this automation runbook to enable S3 bucket encryption against that AWS S3 bucket and put it back into a desired configuration state. So within this demo, we were able to highlight how we can utilize SSM automation runbooks together with our AWS config rules to basically put back into desired configuration state and remediate our resources that are in a non-compliant state. Then we saw how we can then take that and bundle it together with our custom conformance pack template to where we can now apply those same remediation actions to those roles that are being specified within our conformance pack. So now I'm going to hand it over back to Craig, and he'll continue on with the presentation.
Thank you, Isaiah. Now we have two pieces of the puzzle completed. We've seen how to deploy a compliance framework using conformance packs and how to remediate non-compliant resources using automation. But still, there's one thing left to do. We need to prove that we have achieved compliance in our resources. So let's talk about gathering evidence of risk assurance. So within AWS Config, we can take advantage of advanced queries. So advanced queries will allow us to do a few things. We can query the current configuration state of our AWS resources and achieve things such as inventory management, We can gain security and operational intelligence, cost optimization, and shrink compliance data. So advanced queries are going to give you sample queries that are available to help you get started, which we recommend. In order to keep this process simple and get you started quickly, advanced queries are going to allow you to do this, but most importantly, they're going to allow you to do this at no additional cost, which is great, right? So there's one more piece of the evidence gathering that I'd like to talk about, and that is AWS Audit Manager. How do we build reports? How do we prove that we are in a compliant state? Well, AWS Audit Manager allows you to easily map your AWS usage to your controls. And you can use pre-built compliance frameworks or build your own custom frameworks, much like with automation runbooks and conformance packs. You can save time with automated collection of evidence, which will allow you to focus on reviewing the relevant evidence to ensure that your controls are working as intended. You can be continuously prepared to produce audit-ready reports because evidence is continuously collected and organized by control. So you can easily search, filter, and review evidence to ensure controls are working as intended. You can also ensure assessment report and evidence integrity. When it is time for an audit, you can build assessment reports with evidence that has been continuously collected, securely stored, and remains unaltered. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Isaiah, who's going to demonstrate this final portion of gathering evidence and reporting on your compliance. Isaiah, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. So in this demo, I'm going to highlight various features within AWS Config that will help you in gathering evidence against your specific controls that you need to adhere to your specific compliance frameworks. So within AWS Config, I'm going to talk about two specific areas. One is our aggregators. And what AWS Config aggregators allow you to do is, especially in a multi-account environment, aggregators allow you to specify either an organizational aggregator or individual accounts aggregator. And what this will do is it allows you to then basically aggregate all that config data that config is recording and tracking to this specific account where you're going to have this aggregator. It's going to aggregate all that data into one central location where you can then view all the config related compliance data as far as your role evaluation, your conformance packs evaluations, and so forth. So to create an aggregator, you can click on Create Aggregator. We'll select Allow, give it a name, and then here where you can specify the different types of aggregators. As mentioned, you can do individual accounts and where you can specify the account IDs via a common separated list, and then also specify the specific regions where you want to pull that config data from those specific accounts. Alternatively, you can create an organizational aggregator. Now, one thing to keep in mind when deploying an organizational aggregator, it has to either be under the management account or within an account that you enable delegation admin for config. This will then allow you to deploy that organizational aggregator, will automatically gather all that config related data across your organization. Also want to highlight when you do an individual account aggregator, what it'll do is actually send a request authorization to that specific account where you're requesting the data of that the config data to this aggregator. So they would have to accept that authorization and then it'll start pulling that data for you. So within my demo here, I already have an individual account aggregator set up against two accounts. And we're going to see how this is going to be helpful when gathering the evidence. So now let's talk a little bit about advanced query and how we can leverage advanced query to provide the evidence to show that we're adhering to specific controls with the outline within our framework. With advanced query, as Craig mentioned in his presentation, advanced query allows us to query our active deployed AWS resources to gather its currently configuration state. It'll help us gather operational insight, how our resources are currently configured. And so with this an example, we want to look at some of these advanced queries that are provided to us. And we have various sample templates here that we can utilize. For an example, you can get a count of compliant and non-compliant rules of a conformance pack. One in particular I want to go ahead and highlight. In our past demos, we highlighted how we can deploy a HIPAA conformance pack framework, compliance framework, and also how we can leverage remediation actions against specific rules. And we highlighted the S3 bucket enabled encryption, server-side encryption, and how we want to ensure that those buckets have server-side encryption enabled. So I want to go ahead and take a look on how you can utilize advanced queries to provide the evidence that will show that you have those buckets with server-side encryption. So why don't take a look at one of these sample queries that will give us that information. So in there we have one that says S3 bucket with no server-side encryption. So we go and select that. We can go ahead and take a look at this query. And we have a query here, our SQL query here, where it's basically going to pull our resource ID, our resource type, and also our server-side encryption configuration information based on our S3 bucket resource. This query is also providing a where clause where it's going to report back to us any S3 bucket that currently doesn't have server-side encryption enabled. So we're going to go ahead and run this query. And as expected, we don't get any S3 bucket return because our S3 config rule that's enabling that server-side encryption already enabled server-side encryption on those buckets that we have. However, if we modify this query to, instead of reporting buckets that currently do not have it, let's have it report our buckets that currently have server-side encryption enabled. So we'll go ahead and run this same query again. And now it's reporting back my S3 bucket that I have within this account that has server-side encryption enabled. Now, as mentioned earlier, we talked a little bit about aggregators, and this is where aggregators will also provide that additional insight and help in gathering this evidence across all our accounts that we have enabled within that aggregator and pull that information, that evidence that we need to show that we do have server-side encryption enabled on those S3 buckets. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and select my aggregator that I set up for this demo. And now I'll go ahead and run the same query. And now it's reporting all my various S3 buckets that I have server-side encryption enabled across the different accounts that I have enabled within this aggregator. With this information, I could later then export it as a JSON or CSV to later ingest that into another specific report that I can use to show the evidence that I have server-side encryption enabled on our S3 bucket resources. Now, one thing with Advanced Query too is also available to is these same SQL queries you could run via the CLI. So you could actually do this also via CLI and pass the same SQL query and output the same information via CLI command. So here we highlighted how we can utilize aggregators and also advanced queries to provide that evidence in our evidence gathering. One other area I want to show is how we can use Audit Manager. So we're going to go over to Audit Manager. So AWS Audit Manager allows us to basically build assessment reports against specific frameworks. And the way Audit Manager works is you have various components within Audit Manager. You have your control library, and under control library, you're going to see various controls that are specifically to specific control frameworks that adhere to. And so here we have all our different controls here. You also have the option to create your own custom control. Another area is our framework library. Our framework library is going to encompass all the compliance frameworks that we may adhere to, such as CIS, HIPAA, HITRUST, PCI, SOC 2, NIST, and others. You can also create your own custom framework where you can specify the specific controls that you want to assess within your framework. Now, after we have your framework, we now have the assessments. And under assessments this is where we're going to actually create specific assessments related to a specific framework. So in this example, I'll go ahead and type in demo here. It's going to want to put this information, this evidence gathering, into a specific S3 bucket. So I'll go ahead and choose one of my demo buckets here. And then down below, we have the various frameworks that we can choose from. So we have various frameworks, as I mentioned earlier. And so for this one here, we'll go ahead and click on the Audit Manager sample one, which I believe is on the next page. There we are. We'll click on the AWS Audit Manager sample framework, and we'll click Next. And so in this area, this is where you can then specify various AWS accounts where it's then going to basically gather that evidence, do that assessment of that specific framework, and making sure that you are adhering to those specific areas and gathering that evidence for you and collecting it. So I'll go ahead and select this account, and we're going to click Next. And then it's going to ask us to choose the AWS services that are in scope for this framework. And I'll go ahead and click Next. And it's going to want to know now who's going to be your audit owners, who are going to be the ones that are going to be reviewing this evidence gathering and basically create these assessment reports around this framework. So I'll go ahead and select one of my IM roles and click Next. And then it's going to lastly have you review, and then we'll go ahead and create the assessment. Now, this can take up to 24 hours to start gathering the evidence then you can go in there and start reviewing the evidence and applying it to assessment reports. So I already have an assessment that I previously done that we can highlight. It's one for HIPAA. So I'll go into our HIPAA assessment here. And then down below, you can see that we have already gathered various amounts of evidence so far within the accounts that we have Audit Manager running this assessment against. As you can see, we have our group of controls here. And if we dig into these controls, we can actually see various different controls specific to different ones and the evidence that it so far has gathered. So I'll go ahead and take a look at some of these controls. I'm going to take a look at this one here. In here, it's actually taking a look at utilizing the config role data and verifying against this specific control here and utilizing the config roles if security hub is enabled and if guard duty is enabled. It then provides us the evidence folder where we could then later review the evidence and see specifically the evidence it gathered against a specific control. Now, what you can do is then you can then go ahead and select this evidence and add it to an assessment report. This is going to allow you to then take all that evidence that it's gathering across this framework library and build your assessment report where you'll then be provided a PDF document with all this evidence that AWS Audit Manager has gathered and built for you. So we go back to our HIPAA assessment. Under assessment report, we can then click on generate assessment report. That's going to generate that PDF document with all that evidence collection that we apply to our assessment reports. And then we can then have that available to provide as evidence that we're adhering to the specific controls within the framework. So within our demo, we were able to see how we could utilize AWS Config, Aggregator, and Advanced Query to gather some evidence in regards to specific S3 config roles, or gather evidence across our AWS resources. And then also got a nice preview as how we can utilize AWS Audit Manager too to get assessment reports based on assessment frameworks against different other compliance frameworks. So now I'm going to hand it over to Craig to continue on the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Isaiah, for the demo of Audit Manager and Advanced Queries. So now that we're rounding up our presentation, I would like to talk about some key takeaways that we'd love for you to walk away from today's session with. Number one, the 3 lines of defense model has been mapped to the AWS suite of services to help you identify the right service for the right job. The second key takeaway is simplify. Take advantage of the capabilities that are in place that can help you quickly establish an effective compliance baseline. And the third key takeaway is to automate. Leverage automation using tools such as AWS Systems Manager Quick Setup or automation runbooks to help you efficiently roll out a compliance framework, as well as remediation actions that can help you keep your resources in a compliant state. So there are some resources that we would like to make available to you that we think could help in as you take this journey on becoming compliant and rolling out your compliance framework. So let's take a look at those. There are 4 in particular. One you'll see to the left is the Conformance Pack Best Practices. We also have a Git repo with conformance packs that you can go ahead and leverage what's available there. There is a blog post about remediating with runbooks automatically. So if you liked what you saw in the demo, you can do this on your own time on demand and go through that blog post. And we also have a config rule development kit. So if you want to make custom rules, if you don't see what you need in the manage section or what's already available, you can go ahead and create your own. You'll find the config rule development kit there and the QR code all the way to the right. And lastly, thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed as much as we did putting this together, and we hope to see you next time.